Hey, what's up, guys? This is Mark. I'm back to talk about fantasy football. First of all, I wanted to apologize. I meant to make a follow-on video to the one that I made the other day, summarizing week one with talking about the waiver wire pickups for week two. However, that video got corrupt again for some reason, so I wasn't able to post that. Then I kind of got like sidetracked with other things going on. Because keep in mind, like I'm doing this as a hobby. I'm not like a paid professional or whatever to be like making fantasy football videos. So unfortunately, like sometimes that kind of stuff gets in the way. Anyway, but what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna talk about my favorite thing in fantasy football, and that is making trades. So I'm gonna talk about five guys that I'm gonna be like trying to buy right now because their stock is low. Five guys that I'm gonna be trying to sell because their stock is higher than it's going to ever be, really. And then five guys that I'm gonna try to hold and then see how week two goes. And this is in general. Like you want to kind of there's a lot of players that can kind of go either way depending on your offers. Yeah, so that's going to be the focus of this video. And first of all, like I'm going to start by kind of summarizing the waiver wire pickups. Like the waiver wire is already cleared at this point, so a lot of these guys might already be gone. But the ones that I would prioritize picking up if you happen to still have them on your board, the number one guy that I would want is T.J. Hockenson, and I think that that's because like tight ends are such a scarce position to actually have like consistent success in. And I thought Hockenson was going to take a while to actually get going. However, it's looking like he's actually like ready for the NFL right now. This is a guy that was taken with the number 8 overall pick in this year's draft. They say that he's like the next version of Gronk. So and then he goes out and he has like 6 catches, I think about 130 yards and a touchdown already in his first game. Like that's very impressive. So I'm very excited to see what he'll do throughout the season. You want to make sure that that guy is off your waiver wires and on your team. But I think a lot of people have already picked him up at this point if you haven't already. So he is. So I had 6 treats and 6 tricks. I know it's not Halloween yet, but that's kind of. I say that because like there's guys that you want to pick up on waivers, and there's guys that you could get tricked by because I think that might be a flash in the pan type game. So the guys that I like as treats that are going to help you the rest of the season, T.J. Hockenson, that's my number one. Number 2, John Brown, because I think in Buffalo going on there, they don't really have a whole lot of consistent receivers. Brown is more of that deep threat type receiver, and Josh Allen is a guy that can bomb it down the field with accuracy. So I really like the potential for that connection built going forward, especially like the next 2 weeks they got the Giants who just got absolutely torched by the Cowboys in week 1. And then they got the Cincinnati Bengals who, they did okay against Seattle, but I think overall that's a very weak defense and I don't see that really improving. So a lot of potential for John Brown to really put up like 20 plus points in the first couple weeks of the season. Terry McLaurin I really like. And the reason I do is kind of the same. Like the Redskins don't really have a developed receiving core. There are a lot of guys trying to step up. McLaurin really has an opportunity to do that. And it is a little more risky than John Brown because as a rookie you don't know what his upside is going to be. But I like him to potentially step into that number 1 receiver role on a team that desperately needs one. Malcolm Brown I really like. I don't know if he's going to replicate those type of games again, but the reason I like him as a treat throughout the season is if anything happens to Todd Gurley, like this guy, top 10 RB potential throughout the rest of the season. So like you had to make sure that this guy is off your waivers, and you have so much value you can get used with this guy like to the Todd Gurley owner, because that's the biggest concern with Todd Gurley is what is his health going to look like. So if you can convince that person like, hey, like if you take Malcolm Brown, maybe I can get another more consistent player or something like that. They might actually be willing to do that because they want to cover somebody that they took in the first or second round in case he gets injured. And then other guys I like, John Ross, a little more of a standard type play. He had a huge game in week 1. It's going to be, considering the way that guy's performed in the past, I don't know how consistent it's going to be, but it's definitely very promising with the new coaching staff that they're taking advantage of John Ross's speed. So I like that as a potential long-term add, especially while AJ Green is out for a while. And then Chris Thompson, I like that because, especially if you're in a PPR league, like he's going to get his opportunity. Darius Geis is out for an unknown length of time. And the offense is kind of looking like in Washington, like it's kind of expanding a little more from last year. So I like Thompson. He is their most explosive player when he's healthy. And this is a guy that you could pick up on waivers. And he's going to get involved in that offense, and he's going to give you a lot of opportunity there. So I like that. So, and then guys that I said that I listed as tricks because I think that I don't know how I see those games continuing long term. Number one is Phillip Dorsett. Like, great game, like 4 catches, 195 yards, or not 195, 4 catches, 95 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But, an offense that's adding Antonio Brown, maybe. And I mean, there's all kinds of news going around about this guy. But like, and then like the Patriots' way of just like spraying the ball around, like I don't see Phillip Dorsett replicating those kind of numbers. So like, maybe I like him as a week 2 ad because they're going up against the Dolphins, who just gave up 59 points to the Ravens. But like, I don't know, like I don't see Phillip Dorsett being a consistent receiver. Right now, he's their 4th best receiver on that roster. Marquis Brown, kind of the same thing. Like, he was going up against the Dolphins, which like they look like the worst team in football. But I think this guy does have a chance to be the number 1 receiver in Baltimore. But the thing is like, I think that like, I don't know like how often they're going to have those passing explosions like they did in that game. I think there might be a little more like apt to run the ball more often. But I mean, yes, the playfield looks expanded a little bit from Lamar Jackson, but I don't know if I see Marquis Brown always putting up those type of numbers like that. So I wouldn't prioritize a waiver wire pick on him. Case Keenum, great game for Washington, 380 yards, 3 touchdowns. But that's another example of a guy who was going up against the Eagles secondary, which is not great. And although I like McLaurin of the Redskins because I think that he's going to get his opportunities as a receiver, I think Keenum actually might have games where he does not throw that accurately. Going to probably throw more interceptions. The next week they got the Cowboys, which I think is going to be a difficult matchup. So and then there's always the job security questions because they have Colt McCoy, they have Dwayne Haskins. Like, I don't know how it's going to look for Keenum long term. I think that was more of just a outlier game there. Ted Ginn, because he's another trick, because I think Ted Ginn, like, he put up good numbers, but an older receiver. The offense is good, but I have a hard time seeing Ted Ginn hold up the whole season. And I think the team is ultimately like gonna try to run the ball a little more and maybe try to incorporate Traquan Smith a little more as their second receiver. I like his outlook a little better. So Ted Ginn, I'd kind of be cautious about as a long-term ad. Same with Tyler Higbee. Like, he had a touchdown, which, like, for tight ends, like, that is very good. But Tyler Higbee, even on his own team, he's not even the top tight end. Like, Gerald Everett is generally the better tight end of the two, but Tyler Higbee happened to get the goal line look there, and that is why he put up the points that he did. But he was 4 for 20 if you take out that touchdown, which doesn't really equate to a lot of points, especially in standard. So I have a hard time seeing Tyler Higbee replicate that throughout the whole season. And then my other trick is DJ Chark. He had a very good game, but you have to understand that they were playing Kansas City, which not the best of secondaries. In fact, that's their biggest weak point. And the other thing is like they're playing catch up, so they're having to throw the ball a ton to even stay in the game. I think that people kind of took Gardner Minshew lightly because they didn't have a scouting report on him. So like I'd see this offense stagnating a lot in going into week 2 against the Texans. So I'm not high on DJ Chark. D.D. Westbrook is another story, but DJ Chark's numbers there, I wouldn't recommend picking him up on waivers for. So that's my quick waiver wire. So now let's go into trades, and I'm going to talk about like why trades are my favorite, and that is how you make your money in this game. Is you want to try to like figure out who had a bad game and who you can maybe trick your opponents into giving up. And you want to use some of these players that I talked about, like maybe like guys like TJ Hockenson. Yes, he had a very good game, but like you want to see a little more consistency, go after a guy like, say, Travis Kelce, who I'm going to talk about in a little bit, who didn't have a very good week 1, but is easily a better player that you'd ultimately want more than a guy who is in his rookie season kind of thing. You're not going to be able to just do a straight TJ Hockenson trade, but you can do something along those lines to get an ultimately better player that's going to improve your team throughout the rest of the season. So an example of this. Last year when I was playing fantasy football, I had, and I mentioned this in my first video, I had Adrian Peterson. He had a huge game in week 1, and everybody's like, oh, he's back. But basically, like, that obviously wasn't the case. So I had him, I had Demaryius Thomas, who had a very good first game, and then I had Robby Anderson, who had a good game as well. And ironically, Robby Anderson, I'm going to talk about it a little bit, opposite end. But those guys, Anderson and Demaryius Thomas, they both had great first games that were kind of outliers for that season. So I packaged them all together for Kareem Hunt, who did terribly in that first game because the Chiefs were mostly throwing the ball and didn't really need to use Hunt for some reason or another. So, and the guy gave me Kareem Hunt for those 3 players, and I ended up having Kareem Hunt from week 2 to 10 until he got suspended, was huge value for me, and that really helped me out throughout the season. So that's an example I like because I'm kind of proud I pulled that trade off, but like, I don't know. But you want to try to do things like that, and I'm going to try to see if I can help you construct those kind of trades because that'll really kind of help you going into as you go through the season. So week 1 is important. I apologize I didn't get this video out a little earlier so that way you can kind of get some time to talk to your guys in your league. But I'm going to try to do my best to give you the guys that I am most targeting for week 2. And number 1, and the reason I put this guy number 1 is because you only have 1 day to do it. I'm sorry, but it's kind of unfortunately the way it worked out, is Cam Newton. So as I said, like Cam Newton literally was like just as valuable as a Fig Newton in week 1. Like he was just like, I don't know what he was doing, man. He had scored like 5 points in the standard format or something. It's just like, it was bad. But I think that was also because he was playing the Rams. He's dealing with the sprained ankle. Like Christian McCaffrey was pretty effective on the ground in spite of playing the Rams because it's Christian McCaffrey. So, but Cam Newton is not going to play like that again. He's going to have much better games throughout the season, especially since he's going up against Tampa Bay twice. He's going up against the Saints twice, which just was torn apart by Deshaun Watson. Like this guy's value is going to go up tremendously throughout the season. It's never going to be this low. Try to put something together to get Cam Newton. Just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of like an example, like a guy that you would, like let's say that you picked up Case Keenum off waivers, and then you also like had a guy that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, like Sammy Watkins, and then you put together a trade where you trade Case Keenum and Sammy Watkins for Cam Newton. And that is arguably like not a good trade because of the Sammy Watkins value with Hill out. But honestly, I don't see Watkins replicating that. And you get a better quarterback ultimately than Keenum if that was your starter in week 1. So I would do something like that. I think Watkins' example was a little extreme. Another one that I think I'm going to get to another guy that you might want to consider selling, but a guy like Tyler Lockett, I think that would be a decent trade. Maybe you could get in another like lesser known receiver in the mix as well. But like do things like that, and that'll help you maybe like get somebody like Cam Newton, who I think is going to have better games than that one. So that leads, speaking of the Chiefs and Sammy Watkins, that leads me to my number 1 guy that you want to be targeting if you take Cam Newton out of the picture, and that's Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce was something like 4 for like 43. That is not going to happen again either. Like the Chiefs, like for some reason that game, like Sammy Watkins was just like owning the Jags, and they just kept going back to him. But like you're going to see more Travis Kelce involved in that offense. Like he is not going to put up games like that again either. And especially in an offense like that, which is just going to be explosive throughout the entire season, you might as well like take advantage of a guy that's probably now their number 1 receiving option with Tyreek Hill out for a couple weeks. And, you know, like, so good an example here, like TJ Hockenson, and like let's say you have him and then you have Sammy Watkins, and then now you're trying to trade for Travis Kelce. Like I would do that because I'm betting long term that Kelce is going to be their better receiver than Watkins is. And then, Hockenson, like, yeah, it could be a good tight end, but like, is he going to be consistent the whole season? Like, go for a guy that got number one pick value. So that's the type of stuff you want to do. And if you have any comments about like type of trades or whatever that you're interested in, like comment below and I'll kind of help advise you on that. Also on the Chiefs, Tyreek Hill. And you have to understand that like you have risk involved with that because you don't know how long he's going to be out. But if you trade him for a receiver that had a very good week one, plus some other package of other miscellaneous players, like you're getting a guy that's like the number one receiver in standard last year. So even if you can just basically like use the first few weeks, be very smart about picking up streams. And then let's say he comes back like week 8. Then you have the rest of the season, you got a number one receiver that you didn't already have. So you got to take advantage of those two players right there because I think that was a very unusual game for the Chiefs. You're not going to see like 75% of their yards go to Sammy Watkins again or something just absolutely ludicrous. So my third guy that you want to buy is Devonta Freeman. And the reason I say that is that the Falcons in that game, like they fell behind early, and they had to be passing. Devonta Freeman's also coming off an injury, so he only scored like 3 points, even in like PPR, I think. But I do not see that happening again. I think he's going to have better games than that, and he is a better running back than Ito Smith and Quadri Olson. I think the team knows that as well, so they're going to get him involved more. So I think games are going to be better. That Minnesota-Atlanta game was just very weird to me. Like the game script was just totally off. I think both those teams, you really have to take that into consideration with their players moving forward. But Devonta Freeman I would buy because I think that he's going to have better games and he's got a ton of potential once he gets healthy as the season goes along to really be a great running back for you. Another game that I think was thrown off by the game script of the fact they're playing the Chicago Bears are Davante Adams and Aaron Jones. Those are two players you want to try to buy because they both had very bad week ones, but they're top draft value targets. Aaron Jones, like third round pick about. Davante Adams, pretty much universally going in the first round. You got to take advantage of those players now while their stock is low. Like they're not exactly household names, so you could probably get somebody if you throw in something like Julian Edelman and like some other running back or something along those lines, like Julian Edelman and let's say like Sammy Watkins. And then you might be able to convince them to get Davante Adams if they're really not cognizant about football. So, like, things like that, like, you could, like, throw in a big name, like a Tom Brady or a Aaron Rodgers, and then, like, because we all know, like, people are chomping at the bait to get Aaron Rodgers on their team for some, I don't even know why they would want that. But anyway, like, take advantage of people that are just know those names, and then you can get a guy that's got good value like Davante Adams. And then another guy that I just talked about is Robby Anderson. Robby Anderson I like as a buy target because he was dealing with an injury week one. The Jets have a lot of problems at receivers. They like Chris Herndon is suspended. They just lost Quincy Enunwa for the season, which I wasn't very high on anyway. They signed Demaryius Thomas, but like that, I'm amazed the Patriots even got a draft pick from them for that. This is such a bad trade for the Jets. But Robby Anderson is going to emerge as their number one receiver, and the Bills are an underrated defense. He's going to have better games than that, so take advantage of him. And then sell players. I've already talked about him. Sammy Watkins is not going to replicate those numbers again. I think that he could be a decent receiver, especially while Hill is out. But like, this is the highest his value is going to be throughout the entire season. So you might as well take advantage of that while you can, even if he does give you good value, because you might be able to get like a Davante Adams from somebody for that kind of numbers that he had. Tyler Lockett, because Tyler Lockett, like I already told you, like his touchdown to catch ratio was incredibly inflated last year. And it even started out that way this year as well. He had one catch, 44 yards, and a touchdown against the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, come on, man. That's not, like, very impressive to me at all. So, like, you got to try to get rid of Tyler Lockett now because they're throwing the DK Metcalf more. That is their future. They're going to be running the ball a lot with Chris Carson. Like, just try to get rid of Tyler Lockett now because that's just going to, like, he's already still got a lot of hype from last year. Like, I'm just very concerned about like him potentially having games that like he just puts up 0 points. Because let's say he dropped that catch, then he would have ended up with a goose egg in that game. So, just saying. And then a guy that I just seemingly seem to talk about every video is Darth Helmet. You want to try to sell that guy now, like. And I even told you this in the last video, like when he got traded to the Patriots, you have to sell him because there's going to be news that come up about him that's going to lower his stock again. Like his value is going to be very high once he gets signed by the Patriots because everybody's like, oh, he's with Tom Brady now. But like now there's all the news of like him and his personal trainer. The guy's just an absolute mess, and like he's obviously like his helmet has gotten bigger than his head at this point. It's just like I don't even know. Like you just have to like I would not want this guy on my team at all at this point because you're just constantly playing a waiting game of like, oh, is he going to get suspended? Is he going to get kicked off the team? Is he going to go back to being his old self that scored like 40 points that you can count on in a single game? Like I personally would just not want to deal with that. So I would try to get rid of him now before any more news comes out, and which I feel like is likely to happen with Darth Helmet. But I don't know. Another guy, and you know this, like these are guys that had good weeks once, but there's questions about it because they had great first games, but later draft picks. Going off the sample size of what they did now, you want to get rid of them. And another guy like that is Austin Ekeler. Austin Ekeler, like I like him throughout the season, but like 38 points in PPR, 3 touchdowns. I don't see that again. And I think that like the narrative right now is like, well, Hunter Henry's hurt. He's going to miss a couple weeks. Mike Williams might be out. Like, of course, they're just going to keep throwing it to Austin Ekeler, right? Well, no, because I think that, and I've been saying this, I think that Justin Jackson is going to get more involved as the season goes on. So Ekeler, like, I would try to sell him while you can. He is not Melvin Gordon. He is a 5'7" running back, scat back, like Darren Sproles type thing. Like, I would try to get rid of him for a guy. Like, I would honestly rather, if I had a choice between Austin Ekeler or Devonta Freeman rest of the season, I would honestly take Devonta Freeman. Just me personally saying, because I see that more as like an every down back. I think Ekeler had a game that is, you know, it's hard to see that replicating because last year he was pretty consistently at a floor of like 10 to 15 points. I don't see him going back replicating like 30 points a game rest of the season. And then, so yeah, I would try to sell Austin Ekeler. And then a guy that I would try to also sell is Leonard Fournette. He didn't have a standout game in week 1, but the reason I say that is because the loss of Nick Foles is really going to hurt this offense. And I think that teams are just going to start like going back to when they had Blake Bortles at quarterback. They just stack the box, focus on Fournette, make the quarterback beat them, and they're relying on a 6th-round draft pick rookie to try to lead the offense, which, I mean, honestly, that might even be worse than the Blake Bortles situation. Like, I don't even know. So, I would try to get rid of Fournette now. I'm very low on all the Jags in general after that Foles injury. And then, real quick, like 5 guys I want to hold. Well, okay, really it's 7, but there are 2 of them. There's 2 pairs of players that are both fitting on the same team. I want to hold Kerryon Johnson for now. I know there's a lot of concern about like what C.J. Anderson is going to do to his touches and like is he still going to be a 3-down back? But I think like I think part of that is like, you know, like they might have just been like trying to utilize C.J. Anderson like to help control the clock because they were up most of that game until the end when Arizona kind of caught them off guard. But I think that like they were trying to like against a team that in general is not a very good against running back. Maybe they kind of went with more of the approach of like, let's just kind of get everybody involved because this isn't exactly a strong run defense. I think there's going to be games later on where they're going to be behind and they're going to be relying on Kerryon Johnson instead of incorporating like Ty Johnson or something. Like, I think that like Kerryon Johnson, but I'm also am concerned as well. Like, is C.J. Anderson actually going to be in a committee with him? So I would just wait for now. I wouldn't make any drastic decisions on him because he generally was taken very high, and I think he still has a lot of potential. Same thing with David Montgomery. Like, I think that I don't know what Matt Nagy was thinking in that game, but I think he just like really just was trying to not. He was just trying to do too much, I think. And I think that like Dave Montgomery, he's proven right now that he is more effective than Tyreek Cohen and Mike Davis as more of that feature back. But it's gonna take time with him because he's a rookie. And I think that game script with like just being almost fully passed, like they're not gonna be able to do that the whole season. I think that they're gonna rely on the run more. So I think Dave Montgomery's gonna get more opportunity. I wouldn't sell him yet. I would just kind of hold on to him because things could change. But then again, like I wouldn't spend a lot for him either. So that's why I have him in the hold category instead of the buy category. And that's exactly the same thing with Kenyan Drake, like a guy that they didn't use him very much because they were behind and thus trying to pass the whole time. But he is their number one running back, and he's going to get more opportunity as the season goes on. But it's the Miami Dolphins, and you really wonder, like, is this team even going to be good enough to support him as a 3-down running back anyway? So I would hold Kenyan Drake because he's going to have better games, but, like, I don't think it's worth buying him because of that team. So another situation, I already talked about Minnesota and Atlanta, but for the Minnesota receivers, Adam Thielen and Stefon Diggs, I think a lot of people are panicking about them because like, oh, Kirk Cousins only threw it 10 times, and oh, Dalvin Cook's getting like, they're talking about him being a workhorse back, but it's not gonna be like that every game. Like part of it is because they already got ahead by so much in that game, they were just running the ball mostly, so they didn't really need Kirk Cousins to really do a lot. But there's going to be games where they fall behind and they're going to rely on that receiving game because those are two elite receivers. And I think that like they're going to have better games than that, especially Stefon Diggs. So I would hold them, but then again, like understand that like they do want to use Dalvin Cook when he's healthy, and when Dalvin Cook is generally there, they don't do as well. Diggs and Thielen. So last year when Cook was hurt most of the time, they had a little higher values than it might have really been the actual picture of the team if they were fully healthy. So hold them for now because I think they're going to have better games. And then the Steelers, like, I'm concerned about, like, AB not being there, like, what the offense is going to look like long term. But, like, I think it's going to be better than that. So that way, I would hold James Conner and Juju Smith-Schuster. Because you look at the next opponent, the Seahawks, they just gave up, like, almost 180 receiving yards to John Ross. Like, that is not he's a fast receiver, but he's not an elite receiver. So, like, Juju has potential to explode in that game. But he's also a guy that, like, is, like, what is this offense going to look like the rest of the season if it's based off of that week 1 performance? So, I would hold him. Wouldn't spend a lot of investment on him right now just in case anything like that were to happen. Just because the Steelers are concerning to me. But anyway, so that's that's what I'm looking at for trades right now. And this is obviously going to kind of depend on the offers you get. You're going to get all kinds of offers for different players. And, you know, you really want to try to look at like the long-term outlook and think about like generally like where you drafted them, because some guys they were taken too high, but in general, like the people were taking that high for a reason, and you want to try to like work to get ultimately top round value. So if you have a guy that had a great week 1 or something like that, like a guy that did not have a good week 1 but was taken a lot higher than the draft is generally regarded as a better player throughout the entire season. So it's better to have those type of guys on your team, in my opinion, than a guy who really had a good week 1 and then, there's potential that, like, looking like the way the offense is now, that, like, he's going to just be, like, a force the rest of the season. Well, you're taking a pretty big risk there. Like, I'd rather personally go with a guy that's shown that over time, and because that's ultimately what's going to make your team better. And if you have any questions about any of that, if you want help with trades, like, let me know. Send me a comment or a message or something like that, and I'll try to help out, because I actually really enjoy that kind of stuff. And I hope that I can try to help you as the season goes along with making good buys and sells. So anyway, that's all I got for today. Let me know what you think in the comment section, and I'll try to do my best to try to answer you and help you out with your season. So cool. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.